Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm about to head out for travels and we've been super busy as usual. I've been asked quite a bit lately about the Falcor and why the ribbon prices are going up. And about the Xoris, of course. And about Korumm, a much less used item. And then we also have Prova Vandal, among other things. But the reason is quite simple. These weapons have Force Electric procs, which is very useful because it lets you easily activate melee influence even if you don't have electric modded on the weapon. But many of us already know this, so why are these weapons gaining popularity once again? And this has to do with Blast Xata. This has been a known interaction for nearly 4 months now, and I believe Dystopia was the first one to showcase it, so I'll leave it linked in the description. The TLDR is that Blast Influence is already so powerful, and I even used it in my Nova 2.0 Speedva post-rework setup to demonstrate its strengths. We also brought Xata's Whisper, but that was much more so to prevent enemies from being able to fight back by producing these bullet attractors so they couldn't hit me. But I didn't mod any strength on that build at all because, well, it originally came from a Speedva setup that didn't need strength, and most of it is weapon damage. But what happens if you do actually mod strength? Well, there's a new hidden benefit. Most of us know by now that melee influence is only so powerful because it triple dips Banes, which results in 3.7 times more damage. But we also know that Blast is only powerful post-rework if you can hit 10 stacks quickly for the extra explosion because, well, let's just say the base explosions are very small and barely do any damage, right? We also know that Xata's Whisper produces extra hits when you land on an enemy like that. You see the white numbers, and it also has a lot of wonky mechanics. But here's the thing. Blast Influence can produce 2 separate Xata procs. The first comes from your, well, initial hit and double dips Banes as normal, like any other status dot. But the second Xata hit, see, that comes from the spreaded melee influence causing them to hit 10 blast stacks, which I can achieve with Valence formation that we'll explain in a moment later. So that second blast stack, or second blast hit from the explosion, can trigger another Xata's Whisper hit. And this is where the quadruple dip Bane comes from, because one hit comes from my initial, the second one comes from the dot it produces, the third one would come from the melee influence proc, right? So like when I hit them like this, and the fourth one comes from when I hit that. 10 blast stacks, producing another Xata hit. And not just that, remember how Blast doesn't scale up its dot damage with elemental percent, which is the reason why we don't use primed Blast scaling mods, just like Slash and Gas? And that's the reason why it loses out to electric. Well, the second Xata hit created by that Blast explosion actually scales all of the elemental percent you have equipped, allowing Blast to now scale by proxy through elemental percent. The more elemental percent you mod on, the bigger the second Xata hit, even if the Blast dot doesn't get bigger. And it even applies Melee Elementalist twice. What else can we do with this? Because Xata's Whisper is the main helmet of choice, this leaves us with several options. Your melee doesn't need to armor strip anymore because we do so much damage with it, so this leaves us with freedom on choosing other weapons for killing priority targets, like Demolists or Acolytes. And Xata has other funny interactions, like double dipping headshot bonuses, so say Deadhead. And this is perfect for raw DPS builds. So now I can bring something of my choice, in this case Dox Assist, to kill any enemy that causes a real problem and delete them off the map. You basically aim at their head, and you would open fire and watch them evaporate, right? That's all you would need. But this begs the bigger question. Why Falcor? Why Xoris? Korumm, Prova, Vandal, if you can do Blast Influence on any weapon by just modding Blast or just putting Lavos on? Well, because by skipping for electric modding, then this saves slots on the build. Want to know what people are getting as ribbons for these weapons at the moment? Heat and Cold to condense blast into a single slot if you're not on Lavos, or other stuff if you're on Lavos. And Falcor is becoming more popular because its disposition is so much higher than Xoris, and because this method actually cares about elemental percent modded. The easiest way to make this work is with Lavos, who can force blast procs with Valence formation fixed at 200% blast scaling, which is perfect for the second Xata Hit bonuses. Now you need to keep your second and your fourth to be able to make blast, so I subsumed Xata over as 1. We still need to actually mod strength for Xata scaling though, unlike the speed buff build I previously used. So this is just a reference Lavos build for normal everyday use on a blast influence setup. I have gladiator mods because of Xoris crit scaling. Granted, you don't really need this for a typical setup that I would be using for Lavos. I'll also be shown how you can do this without Lavos afterwards, but the non-Lavos version really enjoys ribbons to condense mod slots for max DPS. Now, Arcane Fury can be replaced with Arcane Strike for extra attack speed depending on the melee that you're using. Note that Voruna and Kullervo can also make amazing use of these setups even without Force Blast, since they have easy access to 12 times combo for Weeping Wound status scaling. Note that anytime you use a glaive on, you should consider bringing around Arcane Arachne and Vigorous swap. And this is because they are considered generic weapon damage percent, which is not the same as stuff like Prime Pressure Point, blah, 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 blah. So these are the same as like Vex Armor on Chroma, and these double dip on Glaives and Exodia Contagion-based damage scaling. Do note that for Vigorous Swap to activate for Glaives, you do need to be using a non-dual wield setup. So notice how I can't use Toxicist and my Glaive at the same time. They have their own wielding preferences, unlike, say, an Epitaph or whatever. Okay, so let's take a look at our builds. My Xoris Heavy Detonate build for Lavos looks like this. Now, you can use Sacrificial Steel or Galvanized Steel. I chose Galvanized Steel because it's slightly more damage, but it does have problems on reaching 100% crit chance on Xoris, since the weapon is only base, I believe, 22%. That's the reason why I had Gladiator mods on my Lavos, but outside of Xoris, you wouldn't need them. 3 Glad mods total on the set, 1 here and 2 on the frame, gets me to 96.8 overall on a Heavy Detonate, which should be good enough with melee influences AoE Explosion. I use normal Elementalist instead of the Galvanized one, alongside Amalgam Organ Shatter for double heavy windup speed. The Prime Smite, as I said, quadruple dips the Xata Dot for 5.8 times damage, as well as triple dipping melee influence itself. Reminder that you get an extra Xata hit for every single time that you hit enemies with it active. And the only thing going on here is you might see, oh, look, 1 million damage, but is that really a lot? It is, because there would have been many more 1 million, 2 million, 3 million hits, 5 million. You just can't see them because they already died instantly. That's the reason why. Okay. Let's go back to the build. Galv Reflex is mandatory because this new mod gets us up to 80 initial combo for 4 times DPS scaling on heavy detonates, right? Way better than Corrupt Charge. Volatile Quick Return is mandatory to push the already massive 9 meters hitbox all the way up to 12 meters with 0% fall off. A Riven would replace Prime Pressure Point since you can easily slot Arcane Fury instead, and attack speed doesn't matter as much for Glaives. So for a non-Lavos build, you would drop Gladiator Might and Prime Pressure Point just like this. And you would equip Northwind and Molten Impact for Blast instead. You would also have to drop another mod melee Elementalist for Weeping Wounds so we can get better status app of Blast proc since we no longer have Force proc scaling. And, well, Xoris doesn't exactly have fantastic base status to start with, so this becomes really important. Let's look at the Falcor bounce build next. Since rebound builds is the way to go for this weapon, as that's where the force procs come from rather than the heavy detonate, then we're going to be on 12 times combo, which means we can now use Weeping Wounds for plus 440% status scaling, right? Big damage. And we can also use Blood Rush for plus 440% there as well. Here, give me a moment. Okay. I used Galv Steel instead of Sack Steel because combined with Blood Rush, this is just enough to get it up to 104% for consistent yellows while bringing extra crit damage. I still use normal Elementalist and Amalgam Organ Shatter for the double heavy wind-up speed. And I don't use Galvanized Reflex this time because, well, we're on a bounce build, right? With Volatile Rebound, which means we'll already be at 12 times combo and making initial combo not useful. Ribbons would replace Primed Pressure Point, since that's easily replaced with Arcane Fury again, as we don't need attack speed. Now remember to bring Whirlwind Exilus so that Falcor bounces faster. All you need to do is throw it into groups of enemies like this, and you obviously would just build up your stacks super quickly. You already see 24 stacks, so imagine if I go like this and give Xata, and oh, they all detonated. There were so many damage numbers on the screen, it wiped them off immediately. So if we try to spawn them again, and I do this again, then this is what we get. I have my, where's my influence proc? There we go. So I would have to build combo, of course, right? Oh. But from what you can see, the most important part of this is to actually hit 12 times combo, so that you can actually spread all of your damage out. There you go. Of course, NARAMON can help a lot here too, so that your combo doesn't decay as much as I was on Matarai, so do keep that in mind. And let's go look at a normal melee weapon, such as Prova Vandal. Sure, yeah, let's look at the Force Proc Blast version first. Now, you probably saw this on my Gauss showcase in the past. This is a slightly different version that's not about Blast Expedite Detonate with Heat Procs. We're going the just raw Blast Xata damage scaling. Now, Prova Vandal scales its Electric Force procs in by slam attacks like this, which lets me proc melee influence, despite the fact that I didn't actively mod for it on the weapon for higher weighting. So we just have whatever the base amount is here. You can theoretically skip Primed Reach on a melee influence, normal melee. I wouldn't really recommend this. It's gonna be much more annoying to use, but that can be your Riven slot or one of the options for a blast build later if you're not on Lavos. If you are using Korumm, just keep in mind the way to get the Force Proc Electric is the special block combo with the big AoE. Anyways, you probably noticed that this build is the exact same as how you mod a generic slash weapon. And yes, that's true, because we don't need to worry about our procs since we have Force Proc Electric for influence, and we have Force Proc Blast from Lavos himself, which leads to a very, very traditional build. Valence Formation already grants us 200% blast scaling, so it isn't worth modding more on for the bonus Xata Hit. A Riven, as I mentioned, could replace Primed Reach if you're a freak. Otherwise, you would replace Organ Shatter or Berserker Fury depending on the stats that you get. Feel free to slot a Tennokai Discipline's Merit, if you will, as that would be the best one for this kind of build, since you're going to be hitting very, very often with basic attacks, so every 4 melee hits you get a free Tennokai prompt. Now, on a non-Lavos build, you would replace Berserker Fury out and Organ Shatter with your Blast mods. I can't equip this because of polarity problems, but just imagine that that was another 90% mod there. You could also replace Prime Reach, as I said, if you're a freak, and you would compensate the missing attack speed on any of these builds with Arcane Strike, since you don't really need Arcane Fury as we have Condition Overload. For Riven setup with this going on, you could retain Organ Shatter, which would have been here, so you can get double element for Blast in one Riven, or keep Berserker Fury, whichever one you prefer. And, well, that's it, guys. That's all she wrote. This is the reason why Falcor, Xoris, and Prova Rivens have been rising in prices again, and now you can enjoy it yourself, even without a Riven, especially if you're looking to test it out on, say, Lavos. Like that. Or Voruna, or Kullervo. If this is your first time watching, feel free to leave a like or better yet subscribe. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I'm trying my best to get you new information out as I can, like we've been doing with the Koumei update. Stick around if you want to see interesting memes and builds. Don't want to miss out on any of that for you. That'll be it for this video. Thank you all for watching, and see you all next time.